Follower horror stories, let's get creeped out. This one is from Anonymous. Hi, I love your videos and I hope you see this. This is really weird. I've been having this repeated dream ever since I was 7 years old. In the dream, I have sleep paralysis, but my sleep paralysis demon is my mom. She is being possessed and she runs up to me and it seems like she wants to unalive me. The funny thing is that my dad had a similar repeated dream when he was my age. I've also been seeing and hearing things lately and I don't know if that means anything. Thank you for reading this and I love your videos. Thank you. That is really weird. Has anyone ever heard of anything like that happening? Why would that be happening? Anonymous. I was 7 in a foster home when my foster brother insisted I played a magical board game. Uh-oh. I was raised as a Baptist Christian, so I was skeptical until he told me I could talk to an angel. The game was the Ouija board. Being 7, I had never heard of it and had no idea about it at all. When I played it with him the first time, we got someone named Lily who said that they were on the bad side. We got some info about her life and she said she never lived and was a demon. I was convinced he was the one moving the planchette and laughed it off. Then we said goodbye. He told me that since I didn't believe him, I needed to play it by myself. When I started the game by myself, I was talking to a demon named Zozo. That sounds kind of familiar. He told me that he hated me and would kill me one day. I was scared and immediately took my hand off of the planchette and refused to touch the game again, despite my foster brother telling me that I had to say goodbye. Mind you, I was playing completely by myself and there was no way my foster brother could have moved the board. We were upstairs on carpet. I went to sleep that night and had to keep the light on because I kept feeling like I was being watched. Till this day, I'm terrified and never feel safe. I feel like I'm being watched, whether I'm walking down the street or cooking dinner. I don't like shadows and I have to sleep facing the closet. I don't know if I opened a portal or something by not saying goodbye, but it was completely scary. I only have dreams now about having to fight a demon and eventually getting trapped. This was all in 2010 in Lancaster. That's terrifying. You need to do some cleansing. You need to sprinkle some salt. You need to do some self-cleansing, I believe. I don't know, but that's terrifying. So that's scary. If anyone has any advice, go ahead and plop it in the comments. This is a follower horror story revolving around black dogs, which are famous in folklore and basically bad omens or omens of death. Hi, you asked me to message you with some of my black dog stories, so here we go. I live very close to Sherwood Forest. Our towns are surrounded by woodland and most places can feel quite isolated, even though you're often less than a mile from civilization. Many of the town's inhabitants were miners when I was growing up, and they were often coming and going at all hours of the day. One of the stories that stands out to me the most was my stepdad telling me about the black dog of Yorkshire. He often worked nights as the pay was better and was working with a miner named Pat, who had moved around a fair bit. This wasn't overly unusual. The mines were quite well connected by the coal board, but he moved often enough that it struck my dad as strange. Pat was originally from Yorkshire, but he had been out as far as Wales for work and back again. My stepdad, being quite blunt, asked him why he never stayed and settled anywhere. He refused to answer, just clammed up and wouldn't speak about it at all. Suspicion and rumor were often ridiculed in grueling jobs like that and the dangers they faced on a daily basis. Tunnels collapsed, electrical coils fell, cages dropped, and cart lines broke. The stories they all told of the ways they faced death daily were endless. Anyway, one day, my dad was on shift with him and his car broke down. They were on nights, which had them clocking off about 10 p.m. It was an icy winter that year. We'd already had a couple of snows, so dad offered him a lift home. It wasn't a long drive, so Pat agreed. On the path to Pat's, the drive took them along the outskirts of Sherwood Forest. Sherwood Forest is old. I still live near there today. The trees are ancient and gnarled, and that's before we even begin to discuss the major oak or the legends of Robin Hood. As they passed, Pat began to get fidgety. He kept checking Dad's mirrors and looking up and down the tree line. This distracted Dad. He asked him what the problem was, but again, Pat would not speak. Eventually, Dad turned to look at him, taking his eyes off the road briefly to look at him. As he did, Pat screamed. Dad turned back just in time to slam on the brakes. In front of the car was a dog he claimed was the size of a small pony. Its eyes shone an unnatural yellow, reflecting brightly under his headlights, but the body of the dog was barely visible. It was so dark that it merged with the long shadows cast by the stoic forest. This is a good writer, the person who sent me this. It danced a little on its front paws before retreating to the underbrush of the trees. Both men sat in silence. The sense of unease my dad felt struck him right at his core, and he often said that it felt as though a block of ice had been forcefully rammed into his guts as the thing stared at him. When the shock had worn off, Dad shook it off and began driving again. He tried to strike up conversation, but Pat just stared straight ahead. Despite the coal dust that still coated his face, Dad said that he could tell that all the color had drained from Pat's face. He threatened to stop the car, and Pat became inconsolable. In his panic, he confessed that the black dog had haunted him ever since childhood. Every time it turned up, disaster followed. He said that he had to leave, and he had to leave now. Dad laughed it off. He didn't believe that it was anything to worry about. He had never been so wrong. Pat didn't turn up to work the next day. After Dad had left him, he'd begun packing and already requested a transfer from the board by the time night started the next day. Something I should mention about my stepdad at this point. He was an electrician, a bit sparky they called them, and he worked on the big underground lifts that transported men and equipment to active coal seams. He was working on one with a colleague when the cabling snapped. The cable itself was thicker than an adult's thigh, and it wrapped around him faster and faster and falling into the shaft below. His colleague was a quick thinker, and luckily for Dad, he was throwing the loops off him as quickly as they were forming. If it hadn't been for that guy, he'd have been cut in two. God, that's terrifying. When he was finally clear, the two of them took off outside as they were very shaken up. They stood on the pit top and had a cigarette. Suddenly, Dad got that icy feeling in his gut again. He looked over the stretch of the tip, and in the distance, he could see the reflection of those strange yellow eyes. He swears that the incident was linked to the black dog. He said he felt like the thing wanted to make a point that not only was it real, but that if he didn't pay it the right respect, he wouldn't get the opportunity to tell the tale. He became a believer overnight. I'm lucky enough to live in a very old, very creepy part of the world. If you like stories like this, I'm happy to send you some of the others. The regulars at the haunted pub I worked in had a fair few stories of their own about black dogs, cryptids, and ghosts too. Definitely send us more stories. This was such a cool story, terrifying, but so cool. So yes, please send us more stories. This one is crazy. This is from Anonymous. I enjoy your stories and wanted to share one about my grandmother who is no longer with us. When she was a teenager, she had a guy friend that she would hang out with. One day she was at his house and his aunt told them about how she could call spirits to raise tables. She told them how to do it and explained that once the spirit showed up, they could ask it yes or no questions, almost like a Ouija board. They would need to instruct the spirit to have the table leg tap the floor once for yes and twice for no. My grandmother said they tried it a few times, but being goofy teenagers, they just couldn't be serious. One day they decided they were going to make it happen. She said they sat on opposite sides of a very small table, think TV tray size or similar. They placed their hands on the table and followed the instructions. With a lot of time and concentration, it worked. They became very good at doing this to the point that they could do it with almost any sized table, and a spirit would show up within a couple of minutes. They talked to that aunt again one day, and she told them about how to make a lock of hair appear on the table off of an unalived person's head. They were excited to try this new ritual and did. My grandmother said that at the time the hair was supposed to appear, something grabbed both her and her friend's hands at the same time and threw them back off the table. After that, they never made a table rise again because that experience was confirmation that they were playing with evil. Over the years, I would ask my grandmother if she would raise a table for me to see or teach me how to do it. She absolutely refused because of what happened to her and would never give the specifics of how to do it for my own safety. She had other ghostly encounters, but this one was her absolute scariest experience. This one was just absolutely nutso. I believe this story. I feel like it would just be such a weird random one to make up. What do you guys think about it? This one's actually kind of a beautiful one though, not gonna lie. This is from Izzy Cardinal. I'll tag her in the video. Hey girl, you may not see this, but I wanted to share a lighthearted story. Last April, my boyfriend, now fiance, had a rough day, and I offered to go ride with him after work if he wanted to play 9 holes of golf. That's nice of you. I would not be that nice. We got to our local course and they had him start on the back 9. I was videotaping some of his round. There were these 2 older gentlemen who offered to let him play through as he was moving faster and he would keep speed with the single guy walking ahead of them. To be honest, I wasn't really paying attention and just knew they let him play through. On hole 8, he found 2 golf balls in the hole, which is extremely unusual. He mentioned the man ahead of us and I thought he was crazy because I didn't see anyone. I asked him what he looked like and he said he resembled my dad, who suddenly passed away the July before. He wasn't in any of my photos or videos either, and he would have shown up in them. He said he would find the guy as we were finishing hole 9 to return the balls. He decided to tee off with one of the balls on the final hole, and he hit one of the most beautiful straight drives I'd seen him hit. When we finished up, this man was nowhere to be found. He was using a push cart, and my fiance was right on his heels so he could catch up with him. We never found the man. 2 days later, we found out I was pregnant. We truly believe this was my dad's way of giving him his blessing and to take care of his babies. Unfortunately, they never got to meet as my fiance and I's first date was supposed to be a golfing date the day after my dad passed. We now have a beautiful son named after golfing and my dad. I just think that's such a beautiful story and it almost made me cry. Follower horror stories, let's get creeped out. This next one is from Awesome Kaylee 2. This is a be careful what you wish for type story. When I was 7, I moved in with my brother and his family with my mom because her and my dad split. Being on the neurodivergent spectrum, making friends was very hard, especially when I was the new girl in 3rd grade. I was getting bullied because of some of my odd behavior and didn't really have any friends. This is important. Around some time, my mother was really getting into ghost adventures and things like that, and of course had me watch with her, which I fell in love with. I thought it would be cool to have that as a job. Well, when I was around 8, I was in my room playing, as usual, after a fight me and my mom had about grades and me not wanting to go to school. I pretty much told her about the bullying and no friends, all that fun stuff. After she left, a boy started to appear in my doorway. He looked to be a preteen, what I call emo, black hair, pale white shirt, black skinny jeans. I didn't know his name, but I could hear him talk to me and I had fun. He was my friend. Some time goes by. Hi, baby. Someone wants to hang out and listen to the story. Some time goes by, and after my friend showed up, a dark figure was showing up in my room at night, always in the top left corner of my room, away from my bed. It was big and always scared me. My friend would tell me, it's okay, it won't hurt you. After some time, my friend told me that he had to leave, which made me sad. I was pleading with him not to go. He said, I must, unless you let me all in. All you have to say is I let you in. Of course, I did that night. I had the worst nightmare, and when I woke up, I was covered neck down in scratches like a cat attacked me. When I showed my family, they actually did blame the cat, but I hated having the cat sleep with me. I even kept my door shut and always made sure the cat wasn't in my room because it liked to bite and was declawed. Little did I know that that night I made a big mistake. Over the next 8 years, I would have extremely vivid and terrifying nightmares of little girls and have red on them with red eyes and a tall shadow man with red eyes, all of them screaming for me to join them. I started to develop depression and anxiety. My bed would shake violently. It's terrifying. I would wake up with scratches. I tried to tell my mother, but she never believed me, and at this time was a hardcore Baptist. So I turned to God, begging for him to make it stop. It would keep my cross necklace over my headboard. I remember waking up a few times to see it either knocked off or upside down. When I lived in my brother's house, if I was alone and downstairs, I would hear noises upstairs banging, whispering, laughing, and sometimes when I looked up the stairs, I would see red eyes that would be at knee level if I was standing next to it. My relationship with my mother was bad. We were starting to fight more and more. Then I hit 16 and I met a girl at school. We got close, so close. She showed me paganism and witchcraft. My first spell I attempted was to bind this demon to a Ouija board that I just got. It failed, and then I started reading, and over time, the attacks got fewer and fewer, and over time, I gained somewhat control with the creature. This demon, now my familiar. What? I named it Giggly because when it likes to show itself, it giggles and has a Chester smile with bright yellow cat eyes. What? What The path is spirit work, I guess you could say. I got the job I always wanted, even though sometimes I wake up with scratches and my bed shakes or I get nightmares, but it's not like it used to be. My third eye is wide open and sometimes looking in the shadows isn't very pleasant. It was scary, but now I'm a witch that uses spirit's energy to do hocus pocus. LOL. Giggly is now your friend? Giggly's now your familiar? I didn't see that coming at the end, did you? That's crazy. Wowzers. This story is from Tobe.e. Hello, my name is Cole, and I'm simply hoping for someone to hear my stories. I have quite a few. Some of these instances have left me deeply traumatized when being home alone or in the dark. Even as an 18-year-old, I still sleep with a closet light, hallway light, and even a diffuser that glows in the dark. Whether or not this is relevant information, I'm not quite sure, but hopefully it paints a decent picture. I feel you, I'm still afraid of the dark, and I'm 32. My experiences range from 3 different households, all ranging in 3 different areas of California. This will be a lengthy story split up in different summaries of my experiences with these 3 households. This house is interesting. First, I will start off with its history. It was a former tribal consortium before we moved in. It had a large property, and the road that the house came off of was very, very dangerous. There have been many deaths at the same stop sign turning right into our road, one of which was a vice principal for my school. Many children have either been hit by vehicles at that intersection or died in crashes. That's really sad. First experience. I first started noticing things in the corner of my eye, but I was a 6th grader who often stayed up late, so I pawned it off as just small hallucinations. It wasn't until I recognized this as being something other than my childlike mind when I saw a little girl. I remember getting up to get a glass of water, and right as I hit the entrance of my doorway, I almost saw this flash picture of a little girl looking at me. As soon as I recognized it, it was gone. Second experience. I remember waking up in the middle of the night, hearing leaves crunching outside my bedroom window. It sounded like footsteps, one right after the other. Of course, being young, I was scared. I stayed awake that night after smelling a deep, soily smell. It didn't smell bad, just rich dirt. Not like potting soil, but if you've been on hikes, then you would recognize the musky, almost mildew smell, like mud sitting out in the sun. Lansing House. So now we're on to the next location. I have lived in this house 2 separate periods of my life. I used to visit quite frequently on the weekends. This currently belongs to my grandma, and I would often stay in the guest bedroom. That was my former room. To this day, I refuse to enter it. I absolutely will not enter this damn room. Now, this is the house I currently live in and still sometimes have experiences. The third experience. One night when I stayed over, I fell asleep in the guest room. I woke up to something touching my feet. I thought it was the cat, so I got up and looked around the bed, and as daring as I ever was, I looked under the bed. There was nothing, thank God. I thought that was weird, but summed it up to being the blanket shifting over me. Well, I rolled back into bed and fell asleep. Not even minutes after falling asleep, I felt it again, but this was far more intense. I felt an immense pressure traveling up my thigh to my ribs. Let me tell you, the way I tossed the blanket off and ran out of that room like a bat out of hell. That's fair. I ran into the living room and curled up on the one-man sofa where my grandma's cat was sleeping. I heard footsteps and the sounds of pant legs brushing against each other as if a man was walking around the living room. That's terrifying. Current experiences. As an adult, I have the most difficult time sleeping. I don't have the luxury of sleeping without having nightmares. Nowadays, I have more mental images of things rather than seeing them like the childlike figure I saw as a kid. My paranoia runs strong. I will hear music in my mind and somehow my mind will find ways to make voices come from that. I have no way of describing it without sounding crazy. I haven't seen much, mainly cabinets creaking open or our weird music boxes going off at random points. I will try to attach a video of that. The Aubrey House. I call this the Hell House. Oh my God. If I have ever met evil, this house is exactly that. I have never met so much torment in my life than I did in this period. I don't know where to start off, so please bear with me if you are even reading still. I definitely am. For some background, this is a very secluded house up in the mountains. Very rocky terrain, so much wildlife, and more. I probably won't have each experience in the correct order. My bedroom was located just above the living room. It was a loft, so I had no real privacy. My bedroom had a skylight with 0 blinds, and a small door to the attic. Already scared enough for a teen, at this point I was living with my grandparents full time. My dog would often stare up at the skylight for hours on end. I would call her name and she would look at me for a moment before continuing to stare up. Always happened at night. Noises up and down my stairs. Me and my sisters went outside in the evening and instantly got goosebumps. We noticed something shifting in the trees. It was like a dark black shadow that quickly went away just as we noticed it. I began getting paranoid, staying up because of whatever my dog was seeing. Also, constantly finding dead birds outside our huge glass window that faced my room. Not paranormal, but still creepy. Very much so. Seeing stuff in the halls, hearing voices. At this point, I started sleeping downstairs on the couch. I don't blame you. House phone constantly ringing at night. When answered, there was no voice. I would not go outside at night. I saw things out there staring back. It was around this time that COVID hit, and my grandma was staying down in town. So I was left alone for weeks on end, kind of tripping out. Would not like that. Around this time, my grandpa started tripping out about the same things. Voices, premonitions, the phone. Around this time, my nightmare hit an all-time high about demons taking over the bodies of our family members. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That's terrifying. I started sleeping in the living room surrounded by crosses. I am no longer Christian. This still goes under the Auberry house, but it is too crazy to just add it into a bullet point. So as I said, my grandpa started tripping out. He believed that my grandma had cancer from a brain injury she had a few years prior. Well, they ended up getting a divorce sometime later on, and when he went out to the huge shop we had to get his things out, he fell from the roof and died from a brain injury, the same that he told everyone that my grandma would die from. He died on August 2nd, 2021 at 8:02 a.m., just a few days after the incident. I appreciate you taking these stories. Please do with them what you will. I don't have many people in my life who want to listen to them. And of course, I have more from another distant family member. Also, please, if you have any tips that could possibly help with my current situation, I would love that. Thank you again. I am so sorry that all of that happened to you. I definitely have a little bit of advice, which would be to use salt to cleanse the house that you live in. You know, you can sprinkle it along the doorways and the windows. I would also use something to sage your house, but make sure you're not buying white sage. Make sure that you're buying something that has an open practice. You could probably go to a metaphysical shop and ask for their advice on what would be best. We just obviously want to avoid cultural appropriation, so not wanting to use anything that doesn't belong to us. Another thing you can do is you can talk to the spirits or entities that are in your house, and it might sound silly to do, but you can literally say out loud, we both are in this space. I want you to be respectful of me. I don't want you to do anything that will scare me. You can ask for respect and for there to be less activity. That's something that I've heard of people doing. And also be aware of yourself and your energy, and think to yourself and say out loud, you are the only person allowed to access your energy. You do not give any consent or authority to any of the spirits or entities in the house to have any access to you or your energy. And last but not least, there's this theory, tactic, whatever you want to call it. Basically, you imagine a glowing bubble around yourself of protection. It's like a bubble of protection, and you can make that bubble as big as you want it. It could just be surrounding your body, it could just be surrounding your room, or it could be surrounding your entire house. Think about that bubble even going into the ground and underneath the house. This is advice that Abri from New Blood Universe gave me when I was feeling uneasy because of some paranormal experiences that I've had. So those are all a couple of ways that you can try to protect yourself and make the space feel better. That was a really creepy one. Thank you so much for sharing. If any of you would like to share a creepy story with me, please email me. This is how I'm going to be accepting these now. You can email me at thequeercryptstories@gmail.com. Make sure you put your name or whether you want to remain anonymous. And if you want me to tag you in the TikTok video, please put what your TikTok username is, and I will tag you in the video.